There
Hey,
we
there
go.
we go. That worked. All right. Well, I'm coming to you with the latest of technology. Do you remember when Wallace and Gromit came out and there was like the stop motion animation was like all the rage?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm bringing to you today. A special stop motion version of me.
To be fair, it wouldn't be our podcast if there wasn't some kind of technical issue.
Look, it wouldn't be the Oddcast if it wasn't at least a little bit odd.
I don't know if you noticed, but the thumbnail does have a mushroom on it, so maybe this has something to do with it. Are we all hallucinating?
Look, maybe. No, I have run into this issue once before. This is some sort of a quirk of the Roadcaster, which is, both you and I adore our Roadcasters. They're great little machines, but they're not without personality, shall we say.
Yes.
And I've had this once before, but yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to say this is Cinema Nouveau. I'm just being really avant-garde.
It's all right. No one watches this for you, Topher. They watch it for me. So.
Well, I thought you were going to say no one watches this. I was going to be like, well, yeah, I mean that's true. Only about 1,000, only about 1,000 people in our past episodes.
How is everyone tonight? Good to see everyone back. Lots of people jumping on. You've got your coffee.
Well, it's a green tea. I'm trying to get over. So I've got anesthetic strepsils.
Yep.
Green tea.
Yeah.
And stop motion. What more could you want? Yeah.
Well,
so that is a complete night.
We're both having tech issues. Topher and I had a chat before we jumped on this afternoon, and my computer was playing up. So maybe it's just gremlins everywhere on a Monday. I don't know.
Yeah, gremlins everywhere. Everyone's having a Monday. Now, mind you, people are going to see in a couple of weeks or a couple of months your handiwork. You're working on my rebranding, and it's really exciting and a little bit scary. It's weird having to think about your name in like written form and what the color and what the font and it's the whole thing's just weird, Carly. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's just
I freaked
weird.
him out, guys. Like you know what's gonna happen? We'll put it live, and then your audience is gonna go, "This is shit. Who did this? What an amateur! What a loser!" And I'll be like, "The same person who did the previous one."
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, hey, this has served me well for 4 years. This is great. And it is time to update. And that's what we're doing. But it has served me well. And you did a really lovely job first time around. But you're asking me to take a bit of a leap of faith. You're taking me in, you're sort of bringing me up to date onto sort of the cutting edge of how things look and feel today. And that's just not me. I'm a dag.
You're having a makeover. Topher is getting a full makeover.
Oh, I don't like it.
Wait for it. Everyone will be like, don't change anything. Everyone's like, all these Luddites will be in the comment section.
You mean like Ethan Clark, who's going to be sitting there going, Topher, you should never update? Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. So the issue with this, guys, just before we get started, wait for more people to jump on, is, things evolve. And when you want to start attracting advertising dollars and getting more eyes on a podcast, unfortunately, we do have to branch out. We do have to be able to have a broader appeal, and that may mean some of you don't like it, but that's okay, because not everything on the internet is made specifically for you. I know people forget that.
Well, the first thing is going to be changing sort of the colors and the font. Then I'm going to get my teeth fixed, and then I'm going to get a nose job, and then I think I might finish with a boob job and just start wearing really, really low cut tops. And I think we'll get quite a big audience at that point.
I wanted to say something that there's no way I can mention this at the beginning of the podcast. Maybe I'll save it for Wednesday. But you know that Latino that we talked about?
Yes.
The trans guy that was taking photos in Disneyland?
Yeah.
Guys, if you don't watch Isaac Butterfield, jump on over. He did a video today where he subscribed to Lily Tino's OnlyFans. And I watched that video maybe half an hour before I've jumped onto this. And I'm a little bit traumatized.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what to do with myself.
Did no one tell you that was a bad idea?
I didn't look at it. I just heard Isaac Butterfield relaying what he was looking at. And that was it was too much.
Okay. Well, Ricky Hammer, thank you so much for some trucker bucks. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Maybe I need to just sort of spend some trucker bucks upgrading my magic pixies or something. The pixies are angry with me today.
They are indeed. I apologize if this gives us feedback. I need to go there. There we go. All right, awesome. So there's a few things to talk about, but I think everyone wants to talk about Epstein. That happened today. But we've also had the verdict for the mushroom trial. You and I haven't even talked about that.
Yeah, well, look, we haven't talked about it, and this is a classic example of something I'm just not interested in talking about, because every angle of it has already been done to death. I think whatever I would say has kind of already been said. I'm not adding anything new, and neither you nor I are the kind of person that just wants to jump on something for the clicks. Like there are people out there in the influencer space who just say, what's going viral? What's going viral? Oh, I'll jump on that, and they'll say the same thing as everybody else. And neither you nor I are wired that way. So when I see something and I'm kind of like, well, that's already been pretty well covered. Anything that I would say, I don't have any special insight into that. I don't have insider information or anything like that. I've got nothing to add. And so at that point, I'm kind of like, I'll just leave it. You know, there's other things to talk about.
It's interesting how like something like this captivates the whole country, though. I know like a lot of people are interested in true crime, but I heard a statement today. I actually watched the verdict be delivered live because I was just curious. And someone made the claim, I think it was Channel 7 I was watching, and they made the claim that she is now one of Australia's most notorious murderers, like female murderers. And I was like,
sure,
geez, that's like, you know, that's quite a claim to fame to have. I didn't really watch a whole lot of what happened, but I just sort of watched a recap this afternoon, and I've got to say, she wasn't a very thought out murderer. Do you know much about the case?
Look, I only know a little bit, but I mean, when it gets to the point that she had an open browser, wasn't even using a secret browser, wasn't using a VPN, didn't access the Onion router network or anything whilst researching poisonous mushrooms, whilst planning to poison her.
Dumped the dehydrator, lied about it. Like everything about it was like, mate, you didn't think this through, did you?
I'm just going to say that that she's not the kind of villain out of which Sherlock Holmes novels were written. You know, it just,
it's interesting, but it's funny how like for the moment where this is breaking news, everything else quietens down and everyone's sort of on the one page about one thing. It's like the weirdest thing to unify the country. I'm sure it'll go back to just being split tomorrow, but
we'll all hate each other again in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone's just written, have you seen the prices of mushrooms at Coles? Do I want to know?
It could go either way. Have they gone super cheap because no one wants to touch them? Or is
everyone
like
terrified? Well, out of curiosity, we already know I'm already on every terrorist watch list, but out of curiosity, I had to go and have a look at what a death cap mushroom was. I was like, I've got a heap of mushrooms in my garden beds at the moment. Like they're everywhere and they're brown, like cute looking ones. And, you know, I've got dogs. I'm like, oh my God, is that them? I don't know. But no, I feel like you'd know them. They're pretty scary looking mushrooms. And when you do look at them, you're like, they look like you don't want to touch them. So I'm good. I'm fine. Well, everyone's going to be all right.
What's interesting is that the mushrooms being shown in the mainstream media when they talk about this case are not poisonous mushrooms. And I think I think they're doing that on purpose because they're kind of not wanting to give anyone additional ideas. They're showing very benign, perfectly edible mushrooms in all of the media stories.
Ah, interesting. Well, I actually did Google what a death cap mushroom looks like. I'm now familiar, and I'm sure the police are now watching me. So thank you.
They already had maximum resources, and you're in Victoria. The police have no resources anyway. It's probably ASIO. Well, that's probably ASIO are watching you.
Well, no, I work for them. So what are you worried about?
That's right. I forgot about that. Have you received your Mossad checks yet? Because I'm still waiting on mine.
Dude, I've been waiting. I think they got my account number wrong or something's going on.
Yeah,
some kind of hold up.
Telling me it's in the mail. Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? I think you and I have this unique quandary where we're equally hated by both sides of the fringe movements. So on the left, obviously,
right.
Yeah. So on the left, we are the tinfoil hat right-wing conspiracy theorist Nazis, which is a lovely title. I'm very grateful for that title. But then on the other side, on the black pill, like far right side, you and I both work for Mossad, ASIO. Like we're very busy people.
We are extremely busy people. You know what this is? This is Schrodinger's podcast. Simultaneously extreme left, simultaneously extreme right, and also controlled opposition.
Yeah, do you know what? We juggle so many things. So I just like everyone to be grateful that we're able to still do this while still having so many strings attached to us. So,
Well, Ben, I'm going to have to order a hit on you through Bitcoin because you've figured me out. I'm actually the reason why the list is never going to be made public. Is because my name's on there, and I just thought, you know what, not today. You know.
Do you know what? I have been reading X all afternoon about this, and boy, there's a lot of people who are very, very upset. And I'm kind of torn on this because so your Dan Bonginos, your Cash Patels, your Pam Bondis, they came out gun swinging saying like, we are going to do the right thing. We're going to tell the American citizens everyone deserves to know. And now all of a sudden everything's become very cagey. Everyone's very quiet, tight-lipped, very straight-faced. And this is the problem with the alternating between the Biden government and now the Trump government is that there is so much doubt already being seeded. No one believes anything now. So even if it is actually the truth, no one's going to be placated by that. Everyone's going to continue to believe that, you know, it's the deep state. And honestly, I don't bloody know. You don't know.
No idea. The messaging for this for Trump is really, really poor. The promises made are not being kept. You know, Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, all the people that you've mentioned. These people now have egg on their faces. You made the point when we were chatting pre-show, it's not possible to not have a list. Now, he may not have had a list of, these people did these things. Those people only did those things. He may not have a list in that sense. But it's not possible for him to not have an address book, to not have had a calendar, to not have had records, to not be able to assemble something resembling a list. So it's disingenuous of them to be like, but that doesn't exist. Well, we know the information is there. It may not exist in a simple tabulated form, but we know the information is there. For them to come out now and say, we've got 11 hours of security footage from the outside of his cell block area, and we can tell you that no one came in or out, and here's the footage of nothing happening for 11 hours. You know, to do that now after all of this delay is like you said, no one believes them, no one trusts them anymore, and rightly so. But also the timing of this is really, really bad for Donald Trump and for the Republicans, because this is happening exactly when Elon Musk has said, hey, with this big, beautiful bill, whatever, I'm going to start my own political party. Now, I've seen this happen before. These things usually fizzle. Musk is a bit of a special case, because of the amount of money that he has and the amount of, he runs one of the largest media organizations in the world, that being X. So he's a bit of a different kettle of fish. And if he had not gotten some immediate success in these coming midterms, the 2026 midterms, if he hadn't been able to get a few congressmen elected or something like that, then it might have all fizzled. But if this disenfranchises enough of the MAGA movement, then he might get enough momentum that he decides to keep going and carry on into the next presidential election. And I'm actually writing a video about this exact issue right now. And that has the potential to hand America a Democrat president.
I think, if anything, it's just going to split the Republican vote. It's not going to attract a lot of Democrats. Elon is persona non grata with the Democrats. But what I find interesting is whenever these people step in to go, all right, that's it, I've got enough money, I'm going to go start this third party. I mean, we've seen it with Clive Palmer, for example. Not that he's particularly likable, but the issue is, like, the people who are already polarized and on the fringes, they might be attracted over. But for the most part, most people are unwilling to be the first one to cross that sort of that threshold to vote and support this party. So even if he throws, $1 billion at it, I don't see it working, because you need a huge chunk of people to follow. And I mean, we've seen this tried so many times. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't even work in Australia where it has a chance. It's certainly not going to work in the US where it really doesn't. So a lot of Australians prior to the last election were kind of sucked in by people saying, we need first past the post voting. We've got to get rid of the preferential system. The preferential system's the problem. No, it's not. And I've done whole videos on this. I'm not going to re-prosecute the case here. But the American experiment and what Elon Musk is trying to do right now shows you exactly why preferential is good. Because Musk has, over the last 3 years, has completely alienated what used to be his friends, the Democrats. He used to be, he was a Silicon Valley, socialite, and very, very welcome in those circles. So he had the support of the Democrats by default. He was a part of their world by default. He then said, hang on, I'm not in your world, and really pissed them off a lot over the last 3 years. having not realized, I think he's very politically naive. I think he's phenomenally enthusiastic. I think he's very sincere, but I think he's extremely politically naive. I think that showed with Doge, and what he achieved with Doge was astonishing. It was incredibly good, but he came away from it terribly frustrated, saying, well, it's not enough. And he's right, but he was wrong to think that it was ever going to be enough. He needed to think of that as the first peel of the potato peeler, right? And he couldn't bring himself to think that way, and so he doesn't have a good grasp of the political realities, and we're about to see that play out again, because he's going to go in there. Very few Democrats are going to switch across to his party, no matter how loudly he says this is a centrist party. He is not going to attract very many Democrats.
He's
Mostly
not going to get any.
Well, yeah, not many. Mostly what he will attract is going to be disenfranchised former MAGA people, which means that the Republican vote is going to get split. Which means that unless the best possible thing that could happen right now, and again, I'm doing a video on this, is that at the midterms in 2026, Musk's actions are demonstrably destructive, and the Democrats regain control of the House thanks to Musk being a wrecking ball within that system. And then he wises up and he throws his support back behind the Republicans. Not that I love the Republicans, understand, but this is the problem with a first past the post system. There isn't room for a third party without making life easy for the opposition, in this case, for the Democrats. So this is really bad timing to come out with this Epstein list stuff now. Is just going to fuel Musk and give him a better shot at getting enough success in 2026 that he carries on to 2028, which is where some real damage could get done.
I think my frustration with a lot of this, and I feel like this is the overall sentiment from what I can see on X, is that everyone's had enough with this sort of squabble, this very immature way of operating in politics. I know politics is like that. It's always volatile and it's always, just throwing shit across the political aisle. But this just feels like retaliation to me. I could be wrong, but from what I know, and I've met one of the biggest lobbyists for Gavin Newsom, very lovely guy, but you realize how much power these people have of their politicians. Like his exact words were, "I just have to ask Gavin to do me a favor." That's the frustration. So when I say they're not likely to attract a lot of Democrats, these Democrats are very rarely acting from their own, value system. They're usually acting on behalf of whoever's paying their bills outside of their salary from the government. So for a lot of those Democrats, that's tied to them, getting funding, getting money, getting backroom deals. And so, abandoning ship would mean basically alienating themselves from any potential way to earn extra income. And I just don't see anyone doing that.
And also, they are going to want to make an example out of Musk and the fact that he made himself unwelcome in the Democrats to send a message to anyone else who might be thinking that maybe they could go rogue. If Musk can't get away with it, being a multi-billionaire, then no one can. So they're going to want to try and burn him. Now, Carls, can you do me a favor? Deaf Blackfella is saying he can read Carls's lips, not mine. Could you please apologize to him or her, or him, I assume, Blackfella, on my behalf, just sincerely, and just say, look, sorry, but computer problems, and this is where things are at.
Yeah, so guys, for those who are either listening to the audio and can't see the video, Topher is having some latency issues with his camera, and there's some kind of glitch with the roadcaster he's using, which means that's why you're getting the stop motion Topher. So I apologize, but this is the Oddcast and it would be nothing but odd. So yeah, you're welcome.
It's like a retro music video, says Iron Sword 7.
We're all about nostalgia on this podcast. So
someone just said,
on.
Is there a way to, is that even a thing? I wouldn't have thought so.
Know if we can do that from what I'm in. I think you can actually do it on YouTube, but because we're currently streaming, guys, I don't know if we're able to do it from this end. I am looking.
Yeah, I've got no idea. I hadn't. Yeah.
We will save this episode, so I apologize if it's bothering you.
Yeah.
You can always rewatch it, but stay. We'd love you to stay.
Yeah. See, this is why we have to do a live episode with a live audience, because there can be no lag issues. There can be, it's just human being.
And we're way better looking in person.
I'm so much better looking when you put a brown paper bag over my head.
That is true. It is true. I do have to sedate myself when I sit opposite you every night, every week.
And that's why I have to pay you double every time you do a photo shoot with me. It's the trauma money.
Pretty much pays for
Yeah.
my psych bills. So, all right. So we've talked about Epstein. We've talked about Mushroom Killer. What's her name? Erin Patterson. Sorry.
Erin Patterson.
Um,
Yeah.
um, did you see much of what happened with Diddy on the weekend? Or just
Look, my younger sister had her 30th birthday this weekend, and so my weekend was mostly consumed with family fun times. So no, bring me up to speed.
So Diddy had 5 big charges and he got off on the 3 big ones. So he wasn't he was acquitted on RICO and the sex trafficking. He got found guilty on the 2 lesser charges, which is trafficking not trafficking, it's something to do with prostitution across state lines, or or making people travel for prostitutions. And both of those charges, they carry a sentence of 10 years maximum. And it could be different if it was like concurrently or whatnot. And again, the sentiment around this is the feds deliberately blew this trial. Diddy paid them off, or the higher ups paid it off so that Diddy doesn't blab. And it was, a show trial. It was all staged. And honestly, at this point, I don't know what to believe anymore. I'm feeling so fatigued across the board. I don't think anyone knows the truth. And, the conspiracy theories are very fun to entertain, but at this point, I kind of am leaning into the point where I do believe there is a whole different sect of people above the government, above the politicians, and they're the ones calling the shots. That's where I'm sitting with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who would agree with TASD. Diddy was a part of the CIA deep state. A lot of people would have said the same thing about Epstein. I still think that's a very credible theory around Epstein. What's very, very clear is that none of this is going to help to repair the very broken relationship and the non-existent trust between the government and the governed. But there's two really important things about that. The first one is something you and I talk about quite a lot, Carly, and that is to not get caught up in the things that you can't control and that don't actually have a real world effect. Is it absolutely gobsmackingly awfully wrong that people like this get away with crimes? Yes. Do I wish that wasn't the case? Yes. Can I change the fact that looks like that's what's happening? No. And I owe it to my family, and I owe it to myself, and I owe it to my community, and I owe it, in the case of you and me, Carly, we're kind of in the public eye, but each and every single one of us has our own families and our own sort of domains, and we owe it to our loved ones and to ourselves to put our energy and our focus into the areas where we can make a difference. And this is one of those moments where it would be so easy to get caught up and spend all of our time and all of our energy so focused on, oh no, they are controlling everything. Well, that might be true, but if that's true, you can't do anything about it directly. But what you can do is things that can make your life and your family's life better. And I would really urge people to make a conscious effort to shift your focus to that.
Yeah, and you know what? I've been saying this to quite a few people because obviously, a lot of my friends now watch our show and, what do you think of this? And what do you think about that? And I said, guys, I can't be across everything. I'm barely across what happens during the week, and this is the most interesting thing I've learned from having this podcast with you is even though I'm consuming this stuff daily, there's still stuff I don't know. And obviously I just can't be across everything. And when I am, sort of down the rabbit hole and I'm reading, across the day, I'll read X, I read the Herald Sun, the Age, the Australian, and a whole host of others, and just to sort of get both sides. And I actually end up feeling really crap. And as well, it's really important to be informed. And I think that's why podcasts like this do well. But there has to be a point where you go, all right, look, I accept that for what it is. I can't actually have much of a role in changing that. And realistically, Diddy getting off doesn't affect my life. I think he's a piece of shit. But
pun fully intended. Diddy getting off?
Yes, that's exactly how I meant it. But I think, I've been seeing people's mood really down, and I've got to admit, that happens to me as well.
Yeah.
I get so depressed when I dig too hard. Yeah, you do. You do really have to come up for air.
Yeah, and Carly's a trooper. She's on the front lines. I mean, both Carly's, you are, but also Carly Murphy is on the front lines when it comes to the national parks issue in Victoria and sort of public access to recreational, to our own land, the land that belongs to us for recreational reasons. Now, Carly, you might be able to fill me in because I believe something crossed my desk, and similar to what Carly was saying a moment ago, we just can't keep up with everything. Something came across my desk, and I made a mental note to look into it, and I haven't. And now that I've seen your name, I've remembered it. I believe that there's been a commitment from the Environment Minister in Victoria that he's not going to make the new national park. Can you just, I don't know, type a quick comment and let me know if I'm close to the mark there? It literally it crossed my feed, the page refreshed, and I went, oh, I need to find out what that is, and I never did. So I'd love it if you could bring me up to speed.
Can I bring you up to speed about something or something that'll get us all really excited? I've got a little something to share. Let me just pull it up. Because I'm just here to make everyone's Monday. So where are we? Hang on. I've got to remember how to use this bloody thing again. Okay, share screen. Got it. I'm all good. I'm technically challenged. Is that the one? Better make sure I don't share my Pornhub channel. There we go.
Carly says we won. That is so good. All right, I have to look into that more. Thank you, Carly.
There we go. Does that just warm the cockles of your heart, guys?
Labor on track to win historic fourth election.
So I'll bring up the article. There is Redbridge polling that shows the Allen government is very much likely to secure another victory. I mean, it's early days. There's still another year to go. However, I would say I believe she's going to win. I've got to be honest. I do think she's going to win. I don't think it's bad enough in Victoria. I think the whole Moria deeming John Pesciuto thing is just putting everyone off. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, the Liberal Party are a mess. You and I have talked about that a lot. I've done whole videos on that. It's worth keeping in mind Redbridge are a Labor Party polling foundation. I can't think of the guy's name now.
Cosmaris. He is fairly accurate though.
He's not a partisan hack. I will give him that. But also his polls are used as part of the Labor Party messaging. So I would have a little bit of caution around that. But this to me is a measure of just how useless the Liberal Party have proven themselves to be. If you can't gain traction now, Jacinta Allen should be our generation's Joan Kirner. Now, for those of you that are too young or weren't in Victoria or whatever, we had a premier by the name of John Cain. He was basically Daniel Andrews. He ruined the state's finances. Infrastructure was falling to pieces. Debt was out of control. Crime was actually quite bad as well. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is. And then what the Labor Party did was they shoved a woman out front and said, hey, they did a mid-term swap of premier, exactly what Daniel Andrews did with Jacinta Allen, in order to give Joan Kirner time, supposedly, to build up support to win the next election. Actually, what I believe happened was that the power brokers knew that it was not a winnable election. They were going to go down. And they pushed a woman out front because, well, she's enthusiastic and she thinks that she can win this. Let her go down and we'll save ourselves for the following election, which is what they did. And I believe that's what's happened with Jacinta Allen as well. I don't believe Labor are expecting to win the next election. I believe that they have pushed her out the front because all the men who, a little bit more hard-nosed politically went, oh, hang on, we don't think this is a winnable election. They all took a step back. She stepped to the front. The problem with that is the way the Liberal Party are going, she could very well win. And then the Labor Party are going to have a problem. And it's going to end up exactly like what happened with Julia Gillard. You remember Kevin Rudd got in, became desperately unpopular, and they did to Julia Gillard what they did to Joan Kirner. They shoved her out the front to face what was supposed to be an unwinnable election. Let the woman take the fall. Let's destroy her career. And then us, the boys club, will step in afterwards to pick up the pieces. The problem is she won. That wasn't supposed. I don't believe the Labor Party ever thought that Julia Gillard were going to win that election. And so what happened? They quickly stabbed her in the back and reinstalled Kevin Rudd. And I think a similar fate awaits Jacinta Allen. If she successfully actually wins the next Victorian election, I don't think she'll be there for very long. I think she'll get stabbed in the back by the Boys Club because the Labor Boys Club thought that this was not a winnable election. And it's only because the Liberals are useless that Labor are even in with a shot.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Again, just judging by the sentiment I'm seeing online, there is no opposition in Victoria. I mean, the Liberal Party is a disgrace, federally and at state. But just looking at those internal squabbles, now Maura Deeming is involved in a lawsuit to try and stop the payment or get the payment. I don't even know. Like, who cares at this point? We've got a
Yeah,
state that's so broke, that's going backwards. We're losing so many businesses that are just upping and leaving. And I know there's a lot of socialists out there who are just like, yes, screw the landowners, like, tax the rich. This is the thing that people forget. People have the option to leave. And so what you're
yeah,
seeing is people leaving Victoria and taking with them their business, their money, the jobs they are offering, the investment in the state. And what's going to be left? A whole bunch of people who don't want to pay their way, who have no money, who don't own land, and
yeah,
no one wants to put in the hard work. And my frustration with this is, like, I keep seeing it. Someone made a comment there that the Victorian socialists are gaining momentum. I'm not surprised. Young people
yeah,
just want everything to fall in their laps. But this is what the young people fail to understand. All of the people that you're trying to tax have the option to leave. You don't.
yeah.
And
Correct.
then you're
Correct.
stuck here cleaning up all the mess. So,
Yep.
look, as we've discussed, I've become an accelerationist, and I honestly think this is the only way forward. Labor has to win. I just don't think, even if the Liberals somehow manage to scrape together some policy that has really good messaging that starts to, hit home to people, I
Mm.
don't think that's going to be enough to fix Victoria. I think like, not to go to the point of Venezuela, but I think it has to get to the point where the state is actually bankrupt. There are no more pockets that you can grab money from. And then everyone turns around and looks at each other and goes, shit, what did we do? I think it has to get to that.
At the very least, it has to get to California.
Mm,
And there are people who still think that saying it's like California is a compliment. I assure you, it's not.
yeah.
It has to get to the point where, I mean, we're already at the point. And I've switched cameras, by the way. This is just my laptop camera. So let me know if this is better or worse, guys. It's a worse camera, but maybe because it's not like stop motion, maybe that's the better option. The reality is California is a broke state where they don't have money for basic infrastructure. They're not actually, believe it or not, they're not actually as broke as Victoria is. Victoria is more broke than what
Yeah.
California is.
I think
And
that
have a
the
look at
debt's the same number, right? So it's 200 billion in California and 200 billion in Victoria, but they have a GDP, or a state GDP of 1.2 trillion in California,
yeah,
and
yeah,
ours is
yeah.
like, you might know
California
this.
is the whole of Australia, basically,
Mm.
in terms of its in terms of its GDP.
Yeah.
So we already have a situation in Victoria where you can't afford to get sick and need a hospital. If you need an ambulance, you're in some serious trouble.
That's already
You can't
happening.
afford to need the police, and you're also not allowed to not need the police in the sense of defending yourself and having the means to defend yourself. Our roads are falling to pieces. Our infrastructure, including energy, which is one of the most essential economic inputs in the world, in any economy, is overpriced and increasingly unreliable. And yet people keep supporting the political party that did that to them. There's a reason why I left Victoria. And I was just talking before about how, you don't want to get too caught up in the bad stuff. Well, this is the bad stuff that does affect you day to day.
Yeah.
This is the bad stuff that you do need to be paying attention to, because if you don't, it'll bite you. There's a reason why I got my family out of Victoria. I got my family out of Victoria and we moved high up on a hill outside of flood danger. And I did that about 2.5 odd years ago now, because I knew the floods were coming, because I pay attention. I listen to people like David Burton, Inigo Jones, and because I could see where Victoria was going. And so that's my counsel to anyone that has the option would be, don't sit there thinking that there's going to be some sort of a snapback. I cannot see it. Now, people like Tim Molesworth, who I know personally, has a lot of connection to particular land that's in Victoria, and I respect that. Okay, that's fine. You've got a particular patch of land that you care about, no problem. For anyone that isn't in that boat, and for me, I'd lived in Melbourne since I was 2 years old. Melbourne was my home city. I thought I was going to grow old and die there. But the way that it's turned and the way that it's going, I would be doing my children a disservice to stay there.
Yeah.
And so I won't.
I just want to read this comment from Tanya. Why can't Australians who vote left look at socialist countries and see how happy people in those countries are? Russia, China, Korea, everything is so bad in America. Everyone wants to go there. The issue is, okay, so I'm happy to answer this one because it's a lot simpler than you think. People are grossly ignorant and people are very quick to see what they want to see. So whilst people might look at California and see Skid Row and think, oh, all the homeless people living in tents, what they see is the crazy wealth, the opportunities, the sun, the sunshine. And, it becomes really easy to sort of turn a blind eye, particularly if you're in a way, if you're someone that cares about LGBT stuff, or you care about, progressing in Hollywood or in the arts or something like that. So you see what you want to see and you're somehow able to excuse the shit until it comes to a point where it's really bad. So at the moment, like places like California, the people that are the ones that are talking about it, all your celebrities, all your public figures, they're not impacted by it at all. They live in gated communities. They're richer beyond any of us can imagine. So it doesn't affect them yet. So when you're talking about the young ones here, these, and I'm making a big blanket statement, so just bear with me. But here in Victoria, we have a very strong contingent of young people who are starting to really embrace the far left side of things. So whether it's the Palestine movement, it's the Victorian Socialists, the Greens Party, Abby Chatfields, all that sort of stuff. The reason being, I've said this on the podcast before, but this is a really simple answer. You've got to understand that these kids don't know better because they have been told since the day they were born that the climate is about to collapse on them, that the world is about to collapse. It's unfair, and that they are the bad guys because of colonization. So these kids only know to resent everything that currently exists. So what do they have to do? They've got to do the opposite. And the opposite is, embracing communism. It's that simple. I really do think it's that simple. And a lot of these young kids, their parents are champagne socialists. Their parents are as boomers. They own their home. They're able to live at home with their parents. They're relatively untouched and unfazed. So they're able to go and protest every other day of the week because mum and dad will foot the bill.
Yeah. And it is a sad state of affairs. And Carly, I get where you're coming from. And up until 2015, I would have been right there with you. In 2015, I went to Venezuela. I talk about it a lot. I'm not going to re-go through it, but I met a guy there who gave everything to try and save Venezuela against the will of the majority of Venezuelans. And as a result, he and his family, his son, and now his grandson were stuck in Venezuela as it became a socialist hellhole and malnutrition and starvation and all of the rest of it. So that experience of being face to face with that man made me go, hang on, I never want to be him. And I really sort of made that resolution. I am never going to be him. So I would really, the idealism of we're going to save this, okay? You want to patch holes in the bottom of that boat, that's fine. But pay attention to how many other people around you are smashing bigger and bigger holes in the bottom of the same boat, and just be ready and willing and able to pivot when the time comes, because some ships can't be saved. I'm not saying that Victoria is there yet, but some ships can't be saved, and you need to be able to spot when that threshold gets crossed.
I don't know if this is a troll message from Amanda or not, but if it is a troll, I'll just say this. I find it really repugnant that people that embrace socialism in a country like Australia do so proudly and use the word comrade, when comrade comes from a place where over 30 million people were slaughtered by their government. They were starved to death in famine, all under the guise of embracing communism. So you might think you're cool and you're cute using that word, but what you are doing is standing alongside one of the biggest mass murderers that's ever walked this earth. So well done, you.
Well, I can tell you, Carly, with confidence that you've just made Amanda very, very happy. She's one of my long-standing pet trolls, given away a little bit by the name Trollia. And I'm going to give Amanda credit here. She's quite correct. She got you hook, line, and sinker there. So Amanda is someone that feeds the comment section.
I think I like approaching these trolls because, Amanda, tell me, how many of these socialist countries have you yourself been to, physically been to? I'm always curious. What stamps have you got in your passport?
Also, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say someone's just written China, 500 million citizens. Yeah, Mao. And this is the thing, like all these socialists think it's really cute. You know, you get to wear your hammer and sickle and your Che Guevara shirt and um, go up against, you know, the system. And what you're actually voting for is everyone to suffer. And this is, okay, I'm going to go on a rant. Sorry, I'm ready. I'm here.
Well, hey, so mix all over it. Love you, Toph, but Carl's is on fire tonight. Go for it.
Yeah.
Give us a rant.
This is my show. No, this is what really fucking boils my blood when it comes to socialism, right? Everyone looks at what other people have, you know, your Jeff Bezoses of the world, and they have too much and I have nothing. Therefore, you should have nothing and we can all have nothing together. And then the way they say it is, no. We just want to redistribute wealth. We just want everyone to have a slice of the pie. Well, this is the issue. When you give everyone a little slice of that pie, what you do take away is the incentive for people to actually try, the incentive for people to actually do their bit. And so if everyone's getting that universal basic income, guess what? A lot of people just won't do fucking anything because they know that money is guaranteed in their bank account. Where have we seen that before? Oh, that's right. The dole. You see it often where people go, you know what? I've got enough money to just get by. I don't give a fuck. Right. And that is the, what do you call it, Topher? The perverse incentives of socialism. So whilst you're sitting there going, Jeff Bezos doesn't deserve a super yacht, I can't afford to rent. Okay, you take his super yacht off him. Sure, no worries. And then what you do is take away any incentive for anyone to actually give a damn, do any innovation, try hard, build something new that might actually create a workforce so that you yourself can lift yourself up out of poverty. Nope. Instead, you just want to sit there and embrace everyone else getting torn down because you yourself don't contribute. You want to get it handed to you. And then what you end up seeing is businesses shutting down, everyone getting really melancholy. And then what happens? You end up in breadlines. You end up in realizing that no one's actually contributing anymore. And then there's nothing to take and redistribute. So welcome, that's socialism. But you don't want to see that.
Yeah. So the fundamental difference in worldview is socialism says that there is a fixed pie. And if someone has more than you, it's because they took more than their fair share. Capitalism recognizes that the size of the pie can change, and it can actually change very quickly. And that if someone is responsible for making the pie much, much, much bigger, then them ending up with a bigger slice is perfectly just and perfectly justified. And in fact, it's necessary because that's what gives them the incentive to make the pie bigger. Let's use Jeff Bezos as an example because you just mentioned him. Obviously, it's topical. He just had his wedding, and obviously pretty out there wedding. It's a little bit garish for my taste, but you know what? Whatever. It's his money. It's his money, but whatever. Here's the thing. I personally know people in America, and I'm one of them now in Australia, who is able to make more money because Amazon exists. Right. Mm-hmm. So I know a family in America. They were very low socioeconomic status when I first met them. I met them when I went over there and worked on a television pilot. And they were lovely, amazing people, but really getting by on the smell of an oily rag. And then the job that he had, he lost. The organization collapsed, and that was kind of a disaster for them. But that was right around the time when Amazon had started doing fulfillment by Amazon, which is a business model where basically you put your stock with Amazon and Amazon distributes it around their warehouses around the country, and then people can access it instantaneously. They can go onto Amazon, they buy one, and an hour later it shows up at their door because it was already sitting there in the Amazon warehouse. And they saw this, and they lived in a very low socioeconomic part of America. And so they saw an opportunity because where they live, the rag trade, the clothing business in America works a little differently to what it does here. And they had these outlet stores that were flogging off a mix of new but end of season stock, as well as a bunch of used stock, kind of like our op shops, but on a scale that is hard to believe. And some people built some really clever apps for them to use on their phone, and they could literally go through and scan the barcodes on these clothing items in a TK Maxx over there. TK Maxx over there is very different to what it is over here. And it would look it up on Amazon and tell them what they could sell it for on Amazon. And so they would literally go through scanning thousands of items of clothing in a day and coming out with 11 trolleys overflowing with clothes that they would then package up according to the Amazon requirements and then send to Amazon. I think they only dealt in the new stuff. I don't think they did the secondhand. And they sent it to Amazon and it sat there, and then it got sold on Amazon and shipped by Amazon. It completely transformed their lives. They bought a new house. They were able to actually, get cars that weren't breaking down all the time, and they live really well. And in fact, now they've become really successful, and they go around America speaking at conferences, and they teach other people how to do the same thing. Amazon changed their lives. Jeff Bezos becoming a billionaire is the reason why they became millionaires. Now,
no one wants to talk about this. This is what frustrates me. Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
Well, my own story is a much smaller scale story, but there are people in the UK that can buy my book without having to pay shipping from Australia. And so without question, there are more people that have bought my book now than would have were it not for Amazon. Further, by getting it printed through Amazon, I get a wholesale printing rate no matter how few I print. I can print one book and I only pay about the same rate as I would pay through a normal printer for a run of 10,000 books. So they have enabled micro authors, people like myself who are only moving, a few hundred books at a time rather than thousands or tens of thousands, to actually compete price-wise and to have the same margin per book as someone who's doing much bigger runs. I am able to operate as a small business far more successfully because Jeff Bezos became a billionaire. And this is what people miss.
Can I add into this, like, just aside from Bezos, I'll give you a homegrown billionaire. We've got the Canva founders. I can't remember their names, but there's three of them, right? They're all billionaires. Now, from what I understand, they're very big philanthropists as well. But I just want to talk about Canva. Now, Canva failed for 7 years. They shopped it around. They were trying to get investment. For those of you who don't know what Canva is, I assume most people do, but it's basically a graphic design software. And it is a massive disruptor. Now, I've been a graphic designer for 20 years. We have only ever had Adobe. There was like a couple of like fringy kind of softwares. The industry standard is the Adobe software. And so that meant that you were basically a slave to whatever Adobe said. Now, obviously, there we go, Melanie Perkins, and thank you. I can't remember exactly when Canva came in. I think it was like 2011, somewhere there. And it was very small and very mediocre. And everyone in the graphic design community mocked it. Like, oh, this is shit. This is crap. And then, of course, you've got the people going, oh, it's going to steal our jobs. Everyone's going to use Canva and there won't be room for graphic designers. Your typical kind of reactions. But fast forward to now, I use both. I use Canva and Adobe. I use Adobe just because I'm proficient in it, but I was doing a project for TOEFL today, and I normally do things in Canva if I want to present because it's just easier. It's cloud-based. Everything's up there. I can access it on my phone, my iPad, my laptop. Now, Melanie Perkins and her other two founders are all billionaires. And no one talks about these ones. We only talk about the ones that we demonize. But because they are now billionaires, people like me and people like you now have access to a thing called Canva, which is only $24 as opposed to the now $95. And I think it's going up to $125 a month of Adobe.
Now, Adobe.
They hold you to a ransom. And the issue is, of course, when you have a monopoly like Adobe did, they were complacent. They weren't innovating anymore. They didn't need to. And then you had a startup like Canva rush into the market and disrupt it and make this software available. Canva has gone from 3 people running a startup to now a global business that's employed God knows how many people. And yet we're sitting here demonizing these billionaires. The reason this industry exists now is because 3 people thought, hey, we could do this better. But no one ever wants to talk about this. I mean, this is something that we talk about all the time in the entrepreneur community. Look at Adrian Portelli, another homegrown billionaire. He's demonized now because he's driving his fast cars. Those fast cars are a drop in the ocean compared to the money he's making now building childcare centers. And he's a philanthropist as well. He likes to give back.
But even forget the philanthropy. Other people are able to make money because those businesses exist, because they're able to do business with those businesses. Like I said, with the friends of mine in the US. And Amanda, yes, you can absolutely take credit for this. We are shining the bums of billionaires because billionaires bring value to us all. And those of us that can do math actually know that that's true.
Well, not only that, the thing that annoys me about billionaire status, right? Like this, can we talk about this for a second? They don't have $1 billion in their bank account. People hear billionaire and think that they're liquid. That billionaire is based on stock options and what their investments are worth on paper. None of them actually have $1 billion friggin' dollars. I mean, maybe Elon. He'd probably be the only one. But for the most part, all of this money is tied up and it's all volatile based on the stock market. So they're not really a billionaire the way you see it. Yes, they can loan against it and get all that. But they don't have as much money in their bank account as we assume they do.
Yeah, and even the number doesn't mean anything because most of their wealth, typically most billionaires, their wealth is sitting there in shares. And because the company is publicly listed, or let's say it has a valuation, but let's say the ones that are publicly listed, there's a buy price. Someone is bidding and saying, hey, if the price was this, I would buy a share in that company. And then when a seller and a buyer name the same price, that's when a transaction happens. So what happens is people look at the highest available bid price that someone would be willing to pay for one of those shares. And then they say, well, you have 1 million shares, multiply it by that price. That's your net worth now. The thing is, there aren't 1 million shares worth of buyers at that price. There might be 1,000 shares at that price, and then the next price is here. And there might be 5,000 shares at that price, and the next one's here. And there might be 10,000 shares at that price. And by the time you've sold all of your million, your actual sale price is well below whatever that quoted number is. And then if word gets out, hey, I'm actually going to dump all my shares, the price will usually collapse at that point even further. So not only do they not have it sitting there in cash, it doesn't actually exist. And this is one of the ridiculous things about the $3 million super tax superannuation fund tax for unrealized gains, because unrealized gains are exactly that. They are ephemeral. They don't actually exist yet. And they don't exist to a much deeper degree, I think, than most people realize.
I just want to touch on this comment. I'm enjoying riffing with Amanda. I appreciate
Amanda's
this, Amanda.
Amazing. I'm so glad to have her back. I've missed you, Amanda.
Amanda's more exciting than our other troll, Jim. Jim just bores me. Jim doesn't give us enough playoff. But no, so when you say poor billionaires, I can tell you this as someone who's had a business, my whole adult life. I look at running a decent sized business, let's say, 10 million under. That's a lot of responsibility. I can't even imagine how much responsibility and how difficult it must be to operate a business that is in the billions. Very few people would be able to handle that pressure. So it's all well and good to point fingers and go, oh, where. But I bet you the second you had to sit at that board table, you'd crumble. You wouldn't be able to handle the pressure. There's so many moving parts. You have to make decisions that aren't based on emotion. You have to think about everyone else's needs before your own because your payroll's extensive. I look at this and I just go, the only people that criticize billionaires are people who've never fucking tried and are totally mediocre.
Yeah, and wouldn't be able to make it. And I did a video on this a little while ago. We are better off today. We remain better off today, to this day, because Henry Ford made billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Because what was his name? General Electric guy made squillions of dollars. Because the industrialists and the railway tycoons and the oil barons, because they did what they did, we to this day are better off. They are long dead. They are no longer enjoying anything to do with their money. They've met their maker and they've gone one way or the other. They are long gone. And we still benefit. The quality of life that we enjoy on a day-to-day basis is still better because, of the advancements that they brought in. Now, Christopher Hawkins says he also made cars affordable. I assume that's a reference to Henry Ford. Now, Henry Ford was a horrific guy in many ways, but as a businessman and in terms of his organization of manufacturing, he was a genius. And he took the assembly time for a car, one of the Model T Fords. I've got a 110-year-old copy of his book titled My Life and Work, which is obviously written by him, so it makes him sound like an amazing legend and omits all the really nasty stuff. But it's an interesting read nevertheless, because he takes you through the evolution of his manufacturing processes. And he took, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but he took it from taking about 5 days from start to finish to get a car out the door down to about 90 minutes as it went along the production line. And then he expanded the production lines massively. And this is the key. If everyone could grasp this, it would change the world. He was the first person to be able to make a car that one of his own workers could afford. Right? Just go back and think about a world where the people working on cars would never in their wildest dreams have imagined that they would ever be able to afford to buy one. Why not? Well, because the amount of man hours that went into it, they couldn't, there's 2 years worth of man hours that go into one car. They can't put aside 2 years worth of their own productivity just to get a horseless carriage. Thank you very much. but by Henry Ford refining that process and making it more efficient, getting it down to the point that there were, in total, it was over a duration of 90 minutes, but there might have been a couple of 100 man hours that went into each car now, all the different components and all the bits finally being assembled. And now all of a sudden they go, well, I can save up about 5 man hours worth of my salary every week. And that means that in about, 2 years, I could save up enough to own one of the cars that I build. That is completely mind-blowing. And it completely changed the world. And that's what efficiency, that's what productivity is about. Rich people care about productivity, yes. And we should all care about productivity, because by making people more productive, they can actually enjoy a better quality of life. And no one illustrates that better, in my opinion, than, here we go, than Henry Ford. We have a guest on the show.
This is Aspen, everyone. She's very awkward.
Okay. So hang on. We need to go to this shot, Aspen, so that we can see Aspen a little bit better.
There you go. Come here. She's I call her Riggy. She doesn't like being held. Come here. You dad. Now you've got the entire audience waiting to see you.
Carly, you can pay that dog whatever you want to pay it. That's completely fine.
Leo, you're on the TV now. Say hi.
Def Blackfella and a couple of others were chatting about whether I'm going to go back into politics. The answer is no, not for at least a few decades. Thank you for asking. But when I ran for the Liberal Democratic Party, now Libertarian Party, 2 federal elections ago, I initially said no to them when they approached me, and I said no a second time when they approached me, and they basically begged me a third time, and I said, fine, I'll do it. And I discovered that I really should have stuck with my first answer. I can do more, and I am more useful being someone who's outside of politics, shining a spotlight on them, than I can do from within.
Do you know what? I think people underestimate this as well. And this is something I've been talking to a lot of people about. You need to have the right temperament for the right job. And I think a lot of people believe, because, this is kind of the thing everyone's talking about, you can be whatever you want to be. Well, no, actually you can't. We all have different strengths and weaknesses for a reason, but someone in politics needs to be very, very calm. Someone that is quite stoic. I would believe that's a good quality of a politician. Someone who's methodical, someone who's considered. I'm not that. God, no. Are you kidding? I'm volatile. I can't sit bloody still. You think about
people what I actually think. I tell people what I actually think, and that is not a good skill for a politician.
100%. And I don't do as I'm told. I don't know if anyone's picked that up about me, but as soon as someone goes, oh, this is how it needs to go, I'll be like, stuff that. That's stupid. Let's do it efficiently. But this is the thing about politics, because you and I, I've got dog hair all over my face. It is the oddcast. This is what people underestimate about politics. It's actually a very difficult job, in the sense that you get so bogged down with all of the procedures and all of the paperwork, and it's slow. And I'm just not made for that role. I don't think Topher's made for that role. What we're made for is discussion and thinking, and and using our voice. And that's why everyone has different occupations that they can consider. You got to find something that you're good at, and I don't think everyone's cut out to be a politician.
Yeah, well, my dad told me to find what I was good at and then to stick with it, and it turns out I was really good at pissing people off. So now you've turned
it into a career.
Well, I'm trying. I'm doing my best here, Carly. Doing my best.
Can I give you guys a recommendation? Just talking about the turn of the century, or the turn of the 20th century. We're talking about billionaires. I've just started watching this new show. Unfortunately, it's not on one of the big ones. It's on Paramount, and it's called The Gilded Age. I'm a bit behind the times. There's now 3 seasons. Think like Bridgerton, but set in New York, in the late 1800s. And they're talking about getting electricity in the home for the first time. So Thomas Edison turns on the globes in the house, and you're watching how these big families started to come into New York, and there was the old money and then the new money, and the incentive to build the railway lines and the new train stations and the new buildings. And it's actually fascinating, because, yes, these people are insanely rich, but they're able to do things to build New York City. And so anyone that wants to see capitalism at play, go watch it. It's beautifully done, amazing costumes. I'm really enjoying it. But I think the biggest problem we have today is no one's interested in learning from history. We're so enamored with like really vacuous, superficial brain rot that we see on, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And we don't really think beyond what happened the last week, let alone what happened, a century ago, because it'd be boring.
Well, I unfortunately have to call time on tonight because I told my wife that it was going to be a 1-hour podcast, and she's now organized a call with a client, which she has begun, which means the kids are upstairs with no adults. And that's a surefire way to end up with text. Well, we're going to end up with text drawn on one of my kids' faces or something like that. I just want to quickly, because I really want Amanda Trolley to keep on coming back because she's great for the comments. So I'm going to feed her one last time, feed the trolls one more time. I just want protection of and fair compensation for workers, all workers. Unions are not the devil. Amanda, what annoys me about this is that you think that that's a controversial statement that we would disagree with. I disagree with absolutely none of that statement. Protection of and fair compensation for workers, yes. And the free market is by far the best mechanism to achieve that. For all workers, yes. By far, the free market is the best mechanism to achieve that. The minute you get the government and regulators involved, things go wrong. Unions are not the devil. I'm on the record saying that unions are a good thing for as long as they're voluntary. For as long as they're voluntary in every direction. If there is no compulsion involved, no coercion involved, no intimidation, violence, and standover tactics, which if I were to ask you, Amanda, are you in favor of using violence to get what you want? I would hope you would say no. And so you and I would hopefully share the view that unions are completely fine. They're certainly not the devil, as long as they're voluntary, as long as they don't resort to the use of violence or intimidation or coercion or manipulation in order to get what they want. And so, Amanda, one of the challenges that you're going to have going forward, if you're going to come back and start trolling me again, because you've been gone for a while, is that you're going to need to develop a much greater level of understanding of what it is that I actually stand for and believe, because troll comments like this miss the mark completely. Do better. Come on, Amanda. I know you've got it in you. Do better.
I prefer more when we get told we work for ASIO or we're grifters. No one's called us a grifter yet. Come on, guys. We're an hour in.
Okay, fine. Go to Good People Break Bad Laws and buy my books. There you go. Now you can call me a grifter. There you go. See? Here's some I prepared earlier.
And thank you, everyone, for your super chats. I saw a few come through, so thank you guys for that. But we'll be back Wednesday with the proper podcast.
Yep.
That'll go live Wednesday at 7 p.m. and we'll be back here next Monday at 7 p.m.
Always a pleasure. Thank you,
do we have a surprise on Wednesday? Are we going to be wearing something cool on Wednesday?
I have a surprise for you on Wednesday, but why would we be wearing something cool? What's happening?
The merch?
Oh, no, I haven't received anything yet.
Oh, I was like, where is this going?
Yeah, no, but I have something for you. It's you should be worried. You should be nervous. So everyone needs to tune in on Wednesday night for the full podcast. Yeah, that face is appropriate. That face is appropriate. Bye, everybody.
All right, well, on that note, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in. See you next Monday, 7 p.m.
Bye.
Bye.